The year is coming to a close, so it's time to look back on 2024 and all it had to offer for PS5. In this video, I want to take a look back at some of the most underrated titles of the year, from completely bypassed gems to excellent experiences that have been overshadowed by some of the bigger releases of the year. So let's not wait around any longer. My name is Aaron, this is Push Square, and these are our most underrated PS5 games of 2024. These aren't really going to be ranked just in any order really, but we're starting out with the Outlast Trials, a game I ended up playing quite a bit of earlier this year. This is the first in this cult horror series to switch from single player to online, where teams of 4 must endure various tasks whilst being hunted down by horrific killers. You can't defeat the killers, only stall them, so that run and hide gameplay of the single player entries is still very much alive and kicking here. As a fan of the original Outlast game, I was surprised by just how well the series is translated into online co-op. It still very much feels like an Outlast game, and it manages to balance those anxiety-spiking chases with the hilarity of hearing your mates freak out. There's plenty of leveling stuff to dig into as well if you're into that. This is a fantastic game that not enough people really talk about, and at the time of recording, the latest season, a new killer, is about to drop, or it's already out depending on when you're watching this, so I definitely recommend checking this one out. Redacted is a roguelike set in the same universe as the Callisto Protocol, but this is a far different experience from that 2023 horror. I feel like Redacted just kind of dropped without much fanfare, but I was really glad to see Striking Distance Studios and Krafton cook up something a bit different for its second game. This is a sort of isometric roguelike where with melee, guns, dashes and your GRP abilities, you'll fight through rooms, pick up perks and currency, try to make it all the way to the end of the trial before going back to base and applying your resources into permanent upgrades. The whole premise of the game is essentially you're fighting to make it to the last escape pod so that you can escape Black Iron Prison, which has become infested with all sorts of zombies basically, but there are actually other survivors, employees and inmates that are also vying for that escape pod, so you have to use these abilities to slow them down. You'll fight them in little mini boss fights as well, whilst trying to uncover more of their story by unredacting their files. It's actually such a tight-knit experience, and I went wild for this one. Just the weekend before recording this, I sunk like 20 hours into this game within about 2 days. I could not get enough of it. It's quite a cheap one, it's simple and snappy fun, and I think more people should be checking it out. A Souls-like that dropped earlier this year without much critical reception was Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn. This is a AA outing from A44 Games, but it's got plenty of charm with this grim fantasy world and a solid melee combat system. You partner up with a fox-like god and engage in what is essentially rhythm-based combat, mixing the fox's abilities with melee attacks and old-timey firearms. What's actually kinda nice about it is that it's giving you this Souls-light experience over a more condensed and focused time period, with you easily able to rattle through the thing in 10 to 20 hours, depending on how deep you want to dive into it. I appreciate a game that doesn't overstay its welcome, and Flintlock is one of those games. Banishers: Ghosts of New Eden is a surprisingly heavy and emotional experience with 2 ghost hunters turned lovers torn between their duty and their feelings after one of them is killed. Now the surviving Red is tasked with lifting the curse from a struggling village, whilst Antia, the more experienced of the two, guides them from the other side. As you embark on your journey, you'll be torn between your oath as a banisher, where you basically help wandering spirits move on, and then as a partner to Antia, where you're desperate to save them and even bring her back. There's a real sense of maturity and heartbreak at the centre of this tale that, while critically was received well, most players just passed it by. Another Crab's Treasure may look like a family-friendly adventure, but this is a tough-as-nails Souls-like, whereas Krill, the hermit crab, you embark on an epic treasure hunt, so to buy back your repossessed shell. Exploring a polluted ocean, you actually use the rubbish around you for, well, pretty much everything from fashion to firearms, and you'll be able to wield cool abilities as you beat bigger and more deadly foes. Another Crab's Treasure isn't completely unapproachable though if you're new to the Souls-like genre. It's actually been designed for you to play at your own pace, with the base experience offering a tough-as-nails challenge, but there are also plenty of assist options for those that maybe aren't such gluttons for punishment, or even have as much time to sink into it. Another Crab's Treasure is one of those games that deserves a little more, and sometimes I think it just doesn't quite get it because it has a somewhat child-friendly art style, but it's definitely one you should check out. I love a good movie tie-in. It reminds me of my childhood with games like Peter Jackson's King Kong. What a genuine banger. But anyway, A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead was an unexpected movie tie-in developed by Stormmind Games, the team behind the Remothered games, if you've ever heard of those. But this one is a first-person experience based around basically trying not to make a noise. With these noise detectors, you'll be keeping things nice and quiet as you open doors, watch where you step, and mask louder noises. I love that this game is actually tying its mechanics into what makes the movie series special. We don't get enough of these tie-ins these days, so treasure ones when we get them. Pacific Drive was one of those games that launched in between some big hitters like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Helldivers 2, but it's one of the most atmospheric games on the list and definitely one you should be keeping an eye out for. Of course, this one is actually higher rated, so it lands in the overlooked category, but it's a surprisingly deep survival experience with haunting environments, great haptics, and a brilliant gameplay loop as you basically collect resources and pour them into an upgradable station wagon. You'll tweak everything from storage space to tire treads so as to best counter all the creepy going-ons in the Olympic exclusion zone. From the creator of Silent Hill, Slitter Head is the new game from developer Bokeh Game Studio. It's set in a dense cityscape inspired by Hong Kong, and you will traverse these streets as an entity devoid of memory or form. So you must essentially possess humans so that you can hunt down Slitter Heads, hideous monsters that actually disguise themselves as regular humans as well. You're going to battle against Slitter Heads using blood abilities, but there is also a bit of sneaky in there where you can possess specific individuals that will gain you access to more dangerous and restricted areas. It's a bonkers concept, and admittedly, there's a bit of jank to it, but it has that specific PS3 era charm about it. And when so many games seem so similar, Slitter Head is here to stand apart from the crowd. Okay, please chill out for a second when I tell you that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is an underrated game. The post-launch support has been abysmal, and I had my fair share of problems with how the story played out or how the endgame was shaped up, but Suicide Squad's base experience has some great moments in its story and its gameplay. I think the shooting and traversal is actually really cool and feels frenetic, and it runs smooth as butter. This one somehow snuck its way into my top 5 most played games of the year, and yeah, sue me, I had a lot of fun playing this with a friend. It's not perfect, it sure has plenty of things to critique and dislike about it, but the hate that it got, the manner of which it flopped, it really just boiled down to people being more annoyed that they were losing out in an Arkham game rather than the game itself, in my opinion. Again, it's not perfect, but there's a lot of good in this game that people just completely overlook. And we may as well keep this crazy train going, but I am not afraid to say that Concord was kinda underrated. The game literally just doesn't exist anymore. You cannot play it, you cannot buy it, it is gone, and like Suicide Squad, I totally get it. It doesn't really do enough to stand out, its paywall did put a lot of people off, and it didn't really have the sauce to hook a lot of people in the way that it needed to. With all of that said, the game being ridiculed, largely ignored, and then completely shut down in 2 weeks is beyond my comprehension. There have been plenty of games that look worse, play worse, and are less original than Concord that have done just fine, or at the very least have lasted 6 months to a year. I think this one chalks up to a bad review and that attached negativity that the game just couldn't shake. But nah man, this was nowhere near as bad as people made it out to be, and it didn't deserve to be done so dirty like this. But there we have it, 10 underrated games from 2024. Some you'll agree with and some I am sure you definitely will not. Let me know about your thoughts down in the comments below, and while you're at it, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel for more PlayStation video content. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching, and until next time, I've been Aaron, and this has been Push Square.